I do want to say something there for the parents about the loans.
Yes.
I've had some concern, especially from parents who didn't go to college themselves and their kids are going to be what's considered a first generation college students. Um, I've heard this concern about just the debt that's taken on. And one of the things I have to remind folks is, especially here in the US, the expectation for paying for college actually falls on the student. And so the student has to be responsible for how they're going to cover their uh, educational expenses, whether it be loans, with grants, with scholarships, with working, whatever it may be. The primary responsibility falls on the student. Um, so just keep that in mind. When parents want to help, that's great and welcome, but parents should not have to feel burdened or held responsible for their own students' financial um, expenses, I guess, just for going to school. I've had parents, um, well, I've witnessed, I've known about parents who have taken on second jobs and just an incredible amount of debt to help their students go to school. And that's really great. But again, you have to remember that the one that's going to benefit from this is the student. And long term, they're the ones that are going to reap in the benefits of that opportunity to go to college. So if parents want to help, great, that's totally welcome. But do not feel forced or pressured to, because no one's obligating parents to take that on. That's really only if they decide they want to support their students in doing so. Um, but typically it's the student that really takes that responsibility. So just keeping that, in mind. I unfortunately have seen some students that have pressured their parents to believe that if they want their kids to go to college, they have to pay for it. And that's really not fair, but it's also really nice when the parents can help. I'm going to add for parents to remind their students that every year the financial aid process starts over again. And so every year you're preparing for the following year. So just remember that those that just finished their senior year in high school and are starting college, they're not done. So if they weren't very happy with their financial aid, this is like a second opportunity to start that all over again and hope to do better. And if they liked what they got, to keep applying, because in order to continue that, they're going to have to keep applying for FAFSA, for OSAC, for institutional scholarships from the university, and even private scholarships. There's a lot of opportunities available out there, and it's really good for the students to keep trying. So every year that cycle starts over, and they can't wait to the year for the next year to start to apply. They have to start applying the year before. So if they're starting college this year, just keep in mind, as soon as fall term begins, they should start looking at those applications for the next year.
Yep, 100%. And also to be aware of their scholarships. Some of them are renewable. Sometimes there's stipulations that go along, and I know we mentioned that briefly before, but sometimes they have to keep a certain grade point average, and all of those things are really important to be aware of as you go into the school year to know where you're at. But even some of the scholarships from their high schools are renewable the next year. So I know for a fact that we have a healthcare one in Central Oregon that students can get all 4 years, and they just have to remember to apply. So that's just, sometimes you think, oh, it's just my freshman year, I apply for those scholarships and then they're done, especially the high school ones. But some of them, it's really important to look into the fact that they could be renewable each year. So we're going to talk about college readiness and retention, and just some of the few little bits and pieces that, from having my own kids in college, working with a whole bunch of students in college, and then reading some of the research. Some of the things that you can do at home right now this summer to help prepare your students for college is help them develop and practice using a budget. That's huge. I mean, budgeting and money is one of the main reasons students drop out of college. And if they can learn to budget and practice, making their money go as far as possible, that's huge help for them when they're in college. Teaching them how to do laundry. A lot of students get to college and don't have a clue how to do their laundry, and they have to take their laundry down to the laundry section and use their quarters and all of that. So just keep in mind that that's a really handy tool for students to understand. Talk about healthy eating and other healthy practices. I mean, maybe going for walks and making sure that they get their sleep, all the little things that we know and think about, but are ways to encourage your students so that they're successful in college. Time management's another thing that I read and hear about and talk to students a lot about. So that's another thing that actually can be practiced. You know, I have students write out what a day might look like, what a week might look like for them, what a month might look like. And we're going to actually have a session specifically around time management coming in August. So keep your ears and eyes open for that one, because it's a really big piece for students to be successful at the university level. And then open conversations is really important, just to talk about all the things that you're expecting or worried about. Let them, you know, talk to you about what they're worried about, things like that, and start these conversations early so that students can talk about their concerns. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the research around college retention. Again, a little bit of my own research with my own children. I've read some of the latest research and then just worked with a lot of students, and some of the things that, and then one of the number one, especially for my first gen and low income students that you read about, is the emotional support. Giving those students the support they need to make it through college is even bigger than, honestly, financial support. Being available for your student when they need to talk, helping them work through problem solving, not giving them the answers is really important as well. Teaching them how to look for their answers and to how to help themselves keeps them in college longer as well. Just if you tell them what to do always, then they're not going to learn to take care of themselves and learn how to ask when they need help and all of that. That's a really hard thing for parents to pass on to their students. Encourage goal setting and then set reasonable expectations. So a lot of times we have students that are 4-point students that are going into college, and they get there and classes are a lot tougher. So setting reasonable expectations that getting a 4-point might not be how this is going to work for your student when they get in at the university level. Not saying it can't be. Lots of students get 4 points in college as well, but setting those reasonable expectations and understanding that college is way different than high school. It doesn't mean that your student's not doing great and a good student, but having a 4-point isn't always the most reasonable expectation to have for students. Visit your student if it's possible. They love to have student parent visits if you can make it, but we also understand that that's not always possible. So using social media, FaceTime, Skype, you can see their dorm room and do things like that with your student that makes them feel connected, and it's really nice for them, for their family to know where they're living and what it's like for them on campus. Sending care packages and letters is really nice for your student as well. They love, even though they won't necessarily tell you that, I know that students love getting care packages and letters. And then also it's really important to encourage your student to be involved, because students that feel connected to the university and have friends and things to do and clubs to be involved in are students that actually have a higher retention rate as well. This is 8 signs that your students may be struggling. And I like to take things from the more positive standpoint, but I also think that it's important to understand what signs your student may be giving if they are struggling in college. So this is also just off of some latest research, but calling home often or wanting to come home outside of normal school breaks all the time could mean that they're struggling. Not wanting to return to school after the holidays. If they're really negative about everything that's going on in their life, that could be a red flag. If they're not participating in any school activities, or again, getting lower grades, sometimes that can be a sign, but it also, getting lower grades can also be just them adjusting and trying to figure out what is needed to get better grades in college. So having a conversation is really important. Not going to class or completing school projects, definitely a red flag. Showing a significant weight change, whether that be a significant weight gain or weight loss, is a sign of stress. And then if they're needing extra money often, that could also be a sign that things aren't going so great for them. And of course, these can also mean other things. Doesn't mean they're necessarily struggling in college or not going to make it, but definitely signs that you want to be aware of so that you can have that open conversation with your students.